Hey, how's it going, everyone? Got a request last time we were doing live. It was a little bit a while ago now. I think first one was this year. The last one was, I don't even remember, the week of December last year. But someone was asking if we could go over cutting some soft jaws and kind of the process that we go about cutting the soft jaws for a kind of a different shaped part. So it kind of got a weirdly shaped triangle part with like a big radius right here. So for kind of holding on to that in a good way, you know, there's not really a simple way of just putting in like two flats or anything like, or even V jaws because of that radius in the back there. There's not a good way without kind of crushing the two tips on there if you wanted to be able to keep those. So what we got going on over here is, I actually have to move the camera around today because we don't got our second camera set up. So let me just get that over here. So what we got going on, and I'll go over and show the geometry and everything a little bit later and what we're doing with it and everything. But what I have for the release of all the triangle points, I just cut, I made a slot geometry within the CAD software that's actually just going to clear out where the points are going to be in the triangle when it's going to sit in the pocket. So I had the part actually, how I have the jaw set up, or let me see if I can get that a little bit more focused here. How I actually have the jaw set up is so that I can do op 1 and op 2 kind of like from the same setup. So parts kind of start out as a single block, kind of cut off the saw. I even have the inscribed lines of just kind of where to load it in between. Go get a zoom in on there again. So I just have some little scribed lines in the front jaw there for kind of how to load that part for op 1. And then as the part gets kind of ran into op 1, it'll be like that. Kind of comes off there. So then as I want to go to op 2, I could use the same setup to flip the part right over. Is that lining up right? And kind of put it right in there. And I'm going to just, I'll actually just take this one and face it manually because I don't even have one faced yet. And I don't have a facing program. So I'm just going to bring in a face mill, clear this one off to then be able to go bring in the camera and kind of show how the part looks in the pocket with no stock on the top of the material. And I could get a more efficient pass where I could probably do adaptive and kind of come in to clear off this so I don't have a big lip there when I'm getting to my face mill. But at least for the one part, I got it deep enough in the pocket. I should be able to clear it with the face mill just fine because I got a pretty solid hold on it. And I had a piece of material in there when I actually cut the soft jaws. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but I was just double checking in there that I no longer had that piece of material in there, so I was actually clamping on the part and not the jaws. So we're just going to bring in this face mill and we're going to come in and touch off manually we're just going to touch this one off by hand and just clear the material, just again manually for what we're doing right now. Normally I would have, again, a program kind of set this all to a certain height, have a deburr program for the backside and everything like that. So we're just going to turn the spindle on here. Now I'm just going to step the tool down actually until I start seeing it make some contact with the material. I kind of step it in the 10,000ths of an inch at a time until I get a little bit closer by eye, and then I go into the 1,000ths so that I'm just stepping down. Every time I hit the keyboard, I'm essentially only going down 1,000th of an inch at a time. And I just touched it. So now we're going to come off of it. And again, for what we're doing by hand, I'm just going to actually step it down a little bit at a time right now. Didn't want to mess up my other tool 0. I just want to set this tool at a 0. I hadn't had this tool touched off yet, so just doing that here quick. All right. Now I should be able to, again, just manually jogging it. I'm just going to be stepping down here. And normally you could be running coolant with this, but again, for what I'm doing, it's going to be fine. Just going 30,000 at a time, fairly light. Just because I know too, when I get to those big corners, it's kind of whip those. Again, I could have got a little bit more set up for this with a little bit limited with time, but this will just show a good way that you could always do this for just, say you had to do one part and not program the decking off operation. Say it was just, you had everything done on op 1 and you just needed to get the part to thickness. You would be able to just kind of do something like this where you're just manually decking off the material. Sometimes that can actually be a quicker way. And right now it's going to start to get a little bit chattery as the material starts to be coming like really thin on those steps. Might come off on this next one. No. Looks like one more pass. Probably make some noise on this next one too. Okay, now we're just going to take a cleanup pass, clean over the top of it. Now we'll be able to show the kind of the pocket setup that I got in there for it. I'm just going to go get this tool up and out of the way. Bring my machine a little bit forward so it's easier to grab. Okay. So now I should be able to show a little bit here what I got going on with the pocket better. So I actually just got a clearance here. You know, it's the same type of slot design that I put for, and there's multiple ways that you could do this. You could, you know, like if I would have programmed just to this inside geometry with a bigger tool, it would have had a lot to clear. It would have probably like only got to this far because of the radius of the tool. So even if I would have just plunged a point over in the corner like people do with a lot of different pockets, that might have not been enough clearance for what I was doing. So I actually drew out custom geometry in the CAD to essentially just, I put those slots that would intersect with the part and then just trimmed everything to where when it goes to run that pocket program, it is actually just doing that full geometry of it in a single pass, and then it can clean it up and everything like that. It's not like a separate plunge, or there's not even rest machining, essentially the tool that does all the pocketing. I made those slots a width that allows that tool that does the roughing to go in there and clear those out specifically. So as I take this part out, we're going to go into like the actual process of how we got all the setup and everything going on too. I'm just opening in the jaws all the way to get a better reference inside the machine. And at least how I have this program set up currently. So when when you're cutting your pocket, a lot of times people use cardboard, they'll use different things for kind of putting it in between the jaws right here. Something that I like to use a lot of the times is actually parallels. And then the only thing about parallels is you're going to want to make sure that you're not, and obviously you want to clear all the chips out if you're actually going to put this in there right now. But you would just make sure that your pocket's not going to go too deep to where you're running into the parallels. But I like them because they're a nominal thickness. They're always like about 1/8 of an inch. So when I'm trying to get to the like center of my jaws being closed, I can kind of go off of this back jaw and then just move it half of that distance and get an easy center on it instead of trying to base it off a cardboard or get too close. And a lot of times it's just, yeah, you're trying to, most of the times, get your pocket on center. There is times where that will change based on certain geometries and everything like that. But then I kind of just have these, it's really just these two walls that are going to be pushing against the triangle surface that are going to be the closing force for that. So as this triangle kind of bumps up in there, and it's resting, this radius is really the only locking surface. So it's going to be this radius and then these 2 points that are actually going to be the locking surface on the part. So it's a good way where, even though you can see marks just because it's raw aluminum or whatever, it's not actually damaging the part on any of those locking surfaces because it's lining up on them nice and clean. Actually, I should be able to, can maybe run this program here just kind of with the camera down there and just run it in air of where it was. And it might skim cut a little bit from where it lines back up on how hard I close it, just with the parallels, but we're gonna try this. Oh, I already had that one in there. So I'm actually just gonna go and show the program that was running to make them and kind of just have it go rerun in there and then go show the simulation and pass pilot and what's going on with it as it's running. So I'm gonna get this face mill back out of there. So this 1/4 inch tool is what was doing the pocket. So it's a 1/4 inch tool. I'm gonna close the door just for a second because I think the coolant's gonna kick on, but I'm actually, here, let me just edit out that program here for a second. I'm gonna edit the program just to take out the coolant lines here. Because I definitely don't need them anymore. All right. Oh, forgot to load it the wrong one there for a second. Give me 2 seconds, just loading the other program. That was actually just a finished cut that I still had on there, so I just loading back up my other program here. All right, I think we're good there. All right. So actually you can see the geometry over on the screen. It actually kind of just spirals in, does a roughing pass, and then it's got a finished pass on there as well. Try to get the camera lined up on it before I start running it. So, and because it's actually going in and full slotting in those slots with how I have it, I could have done like some type of adaptive where it does like a tricodial to go in those slots if I made them wide enough. But because they're really close to the width of the tool, I actually broke down the pocket in multiple depths. Instead of trying to go like full depth and do adaptive with it, it is actually doing more of like your traditional pocketing, but doing a, you know, your traditional step over in depth. But then because it's going in there on the roughing pass initially, it's full slotting when it goes into those slots. So that's why I chose to like break it down that way. And this would be something too where I just didn't have this one currently set up, but if I wanted to on that first, like on a bar of stock, I could actually probably run like, 3 ops or like 3 parts right here with what I have room for, and actually cut 3 pockets if I did them at the same time in the jaws. And so I could profile 3 shapes and then turn it over and deck them all off at the same time and kind of save a little bit of time that way. But if you were cutting the pockets like that and you were trying to run a multiple operation, like where you're having multiple parts in there, you would be wanting to cut all those pockets at the exact same time and get them to the same compensation so that you wouldn't be worried about like one part closing on not another part. Same with like the parts that are being ran. You would want all those parts to be ran at the same time to make sure you got that repeatability within them so you actually know that you're getting that good hold on them. So that was kind of how that one ran. And then again, you can show the simulation over here. And I got it going probably like, I got it really nice and deep just because of the surface engagement. That's always something to consider where, as you can see where it would be grabbing on the part, because of it only really being in this spot, that spot, and the radius in the back, it's not all of the surface engagement around the part. So I do want it to be a little bit deeper to make sure that I'm holding on to it well enough for doing like any type of roughing on the secondary operation. And I'll see if I still got my 0 all set up. We're gonna go try to get back to op 1 and just kind of show the efficiency of being able to go right from op 1 and op 2 in the same setup by having that parallel, because I got that parallel cut in the jaws as well. And that's kind of, the idea was to have a full bar of stock in there and do 3, but it still works for just showing the one in the middle for like what I was doing. Let me get this cleared out. We're gonna get our parallels out of there now. Make sure we don't accidentally close on those later. And then again, where right now I actually have like my op 1, when I did op 1, I just saved it as a different offset and 0 as well. So I shouldn't even have to reset any zeros or do anything like that unless I made a mistake. So we're just closing the windows on this one just because I'm pretty sure the coolant kicks on right away. Let me make sure I got my program ready. I'm just going to want to confirm this tool's in kind of where it's supposed to be as it's coming in. Alright, looking good. So again, this was kind of that first op of that part where it's just going to be cutting the triangle profile and putting like a chamfer on it. I'm going to be making these, I'm going to be engraving these little things later and making like little badges out of them, but I wanted to kind of just go with a oddly shaped part that would require something like a secondary operation, like soft jaw pocket, to kind of do both, to hold the part well and then also not damage the part. And kind of show how you could do both of those. And I can go open Fusion here in a second and reference the geometry and the CAD and everything that I was working on for creating this part. And I probably could have played with the speeds and feeds to do it all in a single depth, but it was probably also based on the tool I was using and everything. When I was going at a single depth for the roughing operation on this, I was getting a little bit more like chatter than I wanted to, and I'm sure that was more based on the tool being a little bit duller, but once I split the depth of cut into two, it pretty much took out that problem completely. And where again, it'd probably be a little bit better if it was running with coolant, but for how I'm kind of removing the material, this is completely fine to be cutting dry. And it is always still nice, especially if you're cutting soft jaws, or even if you're cutting like that parallel step in the jaws like I was, if you're not using like a truly sharp tool, you might end up with a little bit of a fillet or radius down in that corner. So you're gonna wanna make sure anything going down in that pocket is gonna have at least a small little chamfer on it and isn't a completely sharp corner, because otherwise you might get it lifting up a little bit where it's interfering with the fillet that got left behind with the tool that actually cut the pocket. And feel free to ask any questions along the way, anything about the setup, tools being used, how we're doing offsets, anything like that. And it just goes into the little finish pass here. Now the program's going to be asking for a tool change. It's had an op stop on it. Maybe not focus on there, but it's doing an M1, so it's asking for an op stop. Now when it goes to the tool change, because I don't have a tool changer in there, it's going to give me a warning to change the tool. So just throwing in the chamfer right now. Like I said, I just want to make sure that this part has a chamfer on it for going down into a pocket. I put a big chamfer on it. You would just need, again, you would at least just want a minimal chamfer for going into any type of corner interference. Yeah, that runs really quick. I didn't have a movement at the end of this program to bring it forward. So, and then if I wanted to, and again, I don't have a program for Op 2 right now. Ideally, that would be what I would have had set up. It would actually be essentially turn the part over right there, run Op 1, lock up on it, and again, my 0 is still saved for Op 2 when I cut the pocket, because that was essentially like the height. I don't have any tools touched off for my height right now in Op 2, but like the 0 when I cut the pocket will remain the 0 for the operational work on Op 2. So again, that would essentially come out like here. Op 2 would run, and then same thing. It would depend on how you would want to do it. Say you could run all of Op 1 while it was set up, or a lot of times what I like to do about a setup like this is that I will kind of prove out the entire part and get both operations set up in the machine, and kind of that way I know when I'm doing Op 2 if like I'm running into any problems with Op 1 that I maybe didn't foresee until getting to Op 2. And that way, then when I actually so I'll maybe run like 2 or 3 to make sure that the setup works like really well and that I'm getting good parts all the way through both operations. But then say I had to run like multiple hundreds of parts, I would probably just stick to loading the parts in, measuring op 1, knowing that op 2 is already set up, so right when all the parts are through op 1, I could just, you know, load the op 2 program and be like good to go and have them coming out. And something that's nice, at least with at least this particular shape geometry in the pocket that I'm cutting, say I had to do any work on either side of the part, I could essentially flip over the part now because it's symmetrical and work on either side of it. I got the burr still on this side, so it's just not falling in there very easily right now, but that's the only reason. But yeah, so it makes it really nice to kind of get a good setup to where you could even do that for your blanks and get your blanks like this and then have your pocket cut for doing any type of actual feature work on either side of the part. Something that would be nice too, something that I could have done, like when I did a witness or something like this, or when I cut this jaw, I mean, I know that I based it like 62,000 off the front of this jaw, but if I ever wanted to take these jaws out, and I didn't particularly cut them this way, but the idea would be if you actually like probe the center of your back jaw here, put the part like on center, you would be able to reload these jaws just, you know, because I don't have any real good way of zeroing or probing off of some type of geometry on the part. I could just go off of my jaws and re-zero, you know, the front here and the side there and know where the actual zero of being able to load this like job and part again. So that way I could actually just throw those jaws right in the vise, be able to load off of that back one. Because the back one's actually what's more critical, and a lot of time when you're resetting the front one, you would want to, you know, kind of almost like a trick that someone taught me like early on is you almost like leave the front one a little bit loose and you kind of just soft lock it up, get it in the position, and then like lightly back it off and then tighten it down. Again, for how accurate that is, that's just a little trick that I was been told that seemed to work well for me in my experience. Yeah, it's really, you can see too, based on how much, you would just want to be careful based on how much geometry that you're removing there for how much hold you're actually going to have like on op 1 if you're trying to use it for a multiple op setup like that. Where you can see here, I'm actually still have a good amount of hold, like when I put this stock in the material, or like in the jaws, I'm still, you know, holding really good there and there, and then same with on the front. I got those two big solid pieces right there, that's plenty of a hold for that operation. Sometimes too, say you had diameter, you could actually kind of step it down based on the height of your part and what you can accommodate for, but you could have like a larger diameter and multiple smaller diameters kind of step down to where you could have a bunch of different setups still in a single set of soft jaws would be the idea. Then, so that was a lot of what we wanted to mainly go over. I'm gonna go start looking at get my CAD set up and kind of go show some of that. Give me a second to jump over to there. All right, sorry, yeah, just had a little issue there trying to get the display capture up. Give me 2 seconds. kind of got there. Give me a second. Now we're just gonna have to do it like that. All right, so yeah, this is the geometry that I was talking about for how I was cutting the actual pocket. So as I go into my sketch here, I'll get out of the design, the manufacturing part of it. So I already trimmed it all, but I can go over to the actual part here. So this is kind of the geometry when I was creating the part and everything that was associated with it. So this offset line, I use this offset smaller triangle to just create the point to start the slot on the inside. So, and to do those, if I go back into design and I edit my sketch, so I think they're down here somewhere too, but it's actually under create. If you go to slot, I was doing center to center point, so if I wanted to do like another one here, like right there to there, you kind of choose your distance and your angle, so that's what I was doing. I guess I'll just reference one of the ones that I already did, just put a smaller one or a bigger one in. So if I go to slot, center to center, I was clicking that point and then this point. And then this is the width that I was talking about, where say you're using a 1/2 inch tool, you would just want it to be even like 520 or 510 would be big enough for the tool to go in there. Just obviously say you wanted to, say you did on your pocketing that you wanted to leave 10,000 stock radially, you would have to, you know, have like 520 minimal to have it be able to go in there and do the roughing. So yeah, that's kind of how I created the slot geometry and the logic based on the width that I used for it, because I was using a 1/4 inch tool. I just created those slots, kind of extended it out. And then when I was in the pocket, actually like creating my pocket geometry, this was just copied over geometry where I just went and started trimming out stuff like that. And I'm just gonna go back and undo this, but this was the idea, that I just kind of went in there and started trimming all that and then got to the geometry that I actually wanted to use for my pocket. And then for cutting the part, it was just, you know, it's just using the geometry of the actual part, and this is all kind of just creation geometry that I used for being able to manufacture the pocket and do stuff. But the actual only geometry of the part would be this triangle form, right? These like 3 lines right there. So, and that's kind of just showing the different step down adaptive for the roughing path, and then it goes in and puts that chamfer on the top of the part. And again, I just don't have any type of second operation in here right now, but that was a kind of go show the pocketing, how I approached it, at least for the programming. So again, I actually just did a light step down just because of how when it goes in there, there wasn't a good way for me to do the adaptive, where again, I know you can do tricodio and kind of have it step in there, but just for what I was doing, I just preferred this type of tool path. It was a nice clean one where I wasn't worried about the tool like bogging down in there at all. And yeah, same thing, just a chamfer there on the end of it. And then sometimes for compensation, they'll go different ways with that, like comp at the machine. I actually sometimes prefer where I'll actually do it in my passes page here. Say I want to cut the pocket a little bit bigger, I'll actually use this minus stock to leave option down there. And sometimes that works really well for me, where again, I don't feel there's a right or wrong way to approach compensation and removing of extra stock. It's sometimes you just want to use all the tools that you have and know about all the options to make it, you know, use the most efficient way that works for you. So again, kind of just normal speed and feed there, kind of just had some basic tools. It's kind of a full, everything that got done here was cutting the jaws, cutting the part, cutting the pocket, was really just a 2-tool operation other than face milling it. But I could probably even go in there and then like for the second operation, kind of get into it and mess with it, where I would go in and do some adaptive or like I could even use like the 1/4 inch tool to remove that remaining stock off the top of the part that would be like left over from this op 1. And again, some of the strengths of cutting the soft draw pockets would be the being able to hold your part, not damage your part, get weird geometry in there where again, these corners where if I would just try to, and we could actually just go in there, let's just go throw a pocket toolpath in there. We're gonna suppress all these really quick. So as I suppress these, I'm just gonna go show that if I wanted to like kind of pocket out only using the part geometry, what that would look like. Gotta go add a depth in there. I think I'm at 0 depths. So something I like about Fusion too is being able to change all these. I like basing, these aren't the defaults that come with Fusion, but I like having everything model top, and kind of basing off of that. So let's just say it's a 0.2 inch deep pocket. So you can see the amount, like the tool actually only goes like right there, and there would, like, and you could essentially never rest machine enough to get to that sharp corner to create this geometry, so you have to have some type of relief in there. So that's where, to me, a simple way of creating that relief is actually creating this slot geometry where, again, if I wanted to say, like just drop a, let's see, let's go edit the sketch. Say I wanted to just drop like the 1/4 inch tool or plunge it on this corner, how a lot of people do, it actually wouldn't get, you know, it would only relieve that to like this little radius right here, the tool before only got to there. So I'd still be having to rest machine with a really tiny tool to even get in there just with like by plunging it on that corner. Like even plunging it over here, I'd have to go pretty far over to where I think I'd probably go far enough over here where, say I leave that one here, say I draw another one here that's like the 1/4 inch for clearance. Now that I would still need to like plunge it multiple times because there would still be like this material left over on the other side of it to actually get to where it would need to be. Or I think I'd be able to show that in the, yeah, so that might, so even there, you can see that that would still not even clear out. Like I would actually even still need to move that farther over. And so that's why sometimes creating that slot geometry and just creating the relief geometry to make something really easy to program to, kind of like how I have here, just makes, you know, can kind of just make your life really simple. Now I have, for compensation, like for comping out, like, cause really I'm only holding on with these 3 walls, I can actually just compensate the whole pocket and do that profile pass to relieve enough for all of it. It makes it nice and simple. I do know, I was looking for it in Fusion. I could not find it in Fusion in the short amount of time that I had, but sometimes on other pages here in height or like passes, and someone might be able to correct me, but there's some software actually allows you, say you had that sharp geometry, and say that I did just select the triangle geometry like this, there is actual functions in certain CAM software that'll allow you to go and like clear that pocket out, and it's kind of built right in to the pocketing function of the CAM software, where you wouldn't even have to create this slot geometry, and it kind of knows how to be smart and clear out those corners for you and gives you options and variables of doing it. All right, well, I think that might be kind of all. Especially if there's no more questions, I might end this one a little bit early so we're not just kind of rambling on and repeating. But we will try to get something nice and in-depth for the next one as well, and get something structured and get really specific into what we're doing about stuff. So unless there's any questions before I get off here, I'll probably end this in just a couple seconds here, give some people a little bit of time to ask a question before I turn it off.